Hey! In the last video, I explained what parts work is, how parts form, and walked you through the method step by step. Today, we're actually doing it. This is a real session on a real issue I worked through, and I'm sharing it because I think a lot of you will recognize yourselves in it. Quick recap for context. I used to compete in tennis tournaments. I know every athlete deals with some performance drop in competition versus practice. That's completely normal. Nerves, pressure, adrenaline, it happens to everyone. But what I experienced was completely different. In practice, I played at a solid intermediate level, but when I played matches, it was like I had never held a racket in my life. Not nerves or a slight drop, a complete shutdown. My body stiffened and my technique disappeared. It was embarrassing and confusing at the same time. When I did parts work on that, I discovered a part in me that was actively sabotaging my performance, not out of laziness, but out of fear. Fear of success and being put on a pedestal and then falling off it. I worked on that and things did improve, but something was still off. I was still holding back and sabotaging, just in a more subtle way. So I went back in, expecting to find the same part, just needing more work. But that's not what I found. What came up this time was a completely different problem, a different part with a different wound. And that part was the real root of everything. There wasn't just one part causing the problem. There were two parts in conflict with each other, and between them, they were running the whole show. The first part I'm calling the hurt child. This part refused to perform and win, because it had made a decision a long time ago that it would rather lose than be loved only when it was winning. It was tired of love being conditional on performance. It wanted to be accepted as it was, not as it achieved. The second part I'm calling the harsh critic. This part represented the voice of a parent who always pushes and demands, gets angry when results don't meet expectations. It wasn't evil. It genuinely believed that pressure was how you made someone better. But the way it delivered that pressure left damage, unfortunately. These two parts had been at war my entire life, apparently. One refusing to succeed, to prove a point. The other demanding success at any cost. And I was stuck in the middle, wondering why I couldn't just play tennis. Now let me explain how I set up the session. I set up two chairs facing each other as shown, sat in the first one, took a breath, and let the hurt child come forward. Without judging whatever's coming up, let myself embody, speak, and think as I am that part. Think of method acting that role. Checking, what do I feel as that part? What does it think about me? Here's what happened. I'm so tired of trying, and it never being enough. Every time I do well, the bar moves. Every time. When I win, the question is always ready. What's next? There's no moment where it's just enough, where I'm just enough. So why should I even try? If I win, nothing changes. I'm still just a performance, not a person. I sat with that for a moment. I didn't rush it. I let it breathe. Then I stood up, walked through the center point, and mentally left that part on the chair. Looked at that chair. Reminded myself that I am bigger than both of these parts, and I am the one holding space. Then I moved to the second chair. Same process. Method acting, the harsh critic. You're being weak. You have everything you need to be great, and you're throwing it away. Do you know how much potential you're wasting? I push because I care. If I didn't care, I wouldn't say anything. I'd just let you be mediocre and we'll look stupid. Is that what you want? You need to toughen up. The world doesn't reward feelings. It rewards results. And then I did something important. I didn't argue with that part. I got curious about it. I asked it, Where did you come from? And underneath all that hardness, I found something unexpected. Fear. The harsh critic was also afraid. Afraid that without the pressure, nothing would happen, and that softness meant failure. It had learned somewhere that love had to be earned, and it was just passing that lesson on, the only way it knew how. I stood in the center point again, looked at both chairs, and I remembered something. Now, this memory didn't come up randomly. It surfaced during a separate process, trauma work and shadow work, which is a little more advanced, and I'll dedicate a full video to it soon, so make sure you're subscribed for that. The short version is, that process takes you back to the original moment a wound was created, and lets you work with it directly. And this was one of those moments. When I was around 6 years old, my father was trying to teach me how to ride a bicycle. He got frustrated, impatient. At some point, he lost it completely, threw the bike with me on it, and walked back home. I fell on the pavement and sat there crying. My older sisters were with me. They were just as shocked as I was, confused, not knowing what to do. It wasn't that I was alone, but in that moment, I felt alone, because the person whose love and approval I needed most had just walked away. That was the moment the hurt child was born. Right there. And later, using that same trauma and shadow work process I'll talk about in the upcoming video, I went back to that moment, not just to remember it, but to actually heal it, to give that 6-year-old what he never got. But I'll save that for when we go deeper into the method. Back to the session, because what happened next in the bicycle story is exactly what unlocked everything. Another important part I remembered: a week later, my cousin, same age as me, 6 years old, came over, put me on the bike, held the back, and said, "Take your time, I've got you." No screaming, no pressure, just presence. And in 5 minutes, I was riding. Same issue, completely different energy, and a completely different result. I brought that memory back into the session, and I let both parts hear it. He answered, "I didn't know another way. I thought that's what caring looked like. I thought if I wasn't hard, you'd fall apart." And then I moved back to the hurt child chair. "I don't want to stop trying. I actually love tennis. I love competing. I need to know that you still love me when I lose, that I'm not only worth something when I perform." And that was the turning point. Now, what I just walked you through was a condensed version of the conversation. In a real session, this dialogue goes much longer. There's more back and forth, more sitting with each part, and more moments of silence where you just let the part feel seen. Sometimes a single session like this can take an hour or more, and that's completely okay. Remember, these parts have been waiting years to be heard. Don't rush them. But the core of what happened is exactly what you just heard. And that's what matters. That result wasn't a compromise. Both parts reached an agreement. We push ourselves, because growth feels good and we want to be better. But we do it with kindness. We do it the way my cousin taught me to ride that bike, with patience, presence, and without screaming. And if we're trying and we're doing our best, that is enough. The result is just information, not a verdict on our worth. In the end, the harsh critic didn't disappear. It transformed. It became something more like a supportive coach. It still pushes, but now it pushes with warmth. And the hurt child didn't give up. It finally felt safe enough to try. After that session, something shifted. I started enjoying competition again, not just tolerating it. I started being nicer to myself after mistakes, and not only in competition or social situations, but in life in general. That toxic self-talk, the one that sounded a lot like my father at his worst, started to quiet down. And here's something I didn't expect. My arthritis inflammation on days where I pushed my body hard, but stayed kind to myself, was noticeably better than on days where I pushed just as hard, but buried myself in negative self-talk and blame. I looked into this later, and it turns out autoimmune responses not only can be deeply connected to our nervous system and emotional state, but even to unresolved patterns that the body is still carrying. That's a whole other conversation for another video, but I'll leave that thought with you for now. One thing I want you to take from this session: the goal was never to destroy the harsh critic or to let the hurt child stay quiet and perform. The goal was to understand both of them fully, without rushing or hidden agendas, because that's what they never got from the adults in their lives. Your parts don't need to be fixed, they need to be heard. And you are the only one who can do that. In the next video, I'll go deeper into the trauma and shadow work that helped me trace where these parts came from. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Oh, and one more thing I forgot to mention. In this session, the harsh critic reached that softer place on its own. I didn't feel the need to do anything further. It just found a healthier role, and that was enough. So I let it stay. But that won't always be the case. Sometimes you might feel called to merge with a part and integrate it back into yourself. Other times, you might need to say goodbye to it or release it in whatever way feels right to you intuitively. There's no single correct way to do that. You'll know what's needed when you're in it. Tell me your thoughts below. Would you try this process? And if you've ever done something similar, what came up for you? And tell me if you'd like to see more session examples. I'd love to share more of these with you. And remember, trust the process. Every step you take in this work brings you closer to who you truly are. Now take care. I'll see you in the next one.